December 22nd, 1944, Bastogne, Belgium. The frost-covered ground crunched under Private Leo Palmer's boots as he peered through the morning mist from his foxhole. From the German lines ahead, 4 figures emerged waving white flags, one carrying a briefcase. For 3 days, roughly 12,000 American soldiers had been trapped, surrounded by 5 German armored divisions. They were cold, hungry, and running out of ammunition. The Germans were about to offer them a way out. What no one yet realized was that this moment would expose one of the most revealing contrasts in military history, a cultural divide so vast that it defined the very essence of what made the American paratrooper different from every soldier who had come before. The story began 6 days earlier, on December 16th, when Adolf Hitler launched his final desperate gamble to split the Allied front and seize the Belgian port of Antwerp. More than 200,000 German troops and nearly 1,000 tanks burst through thinly held American lines in the Ardennes forest. The surprise attack, the Battle of the Bulge, was Germany's last great offensive on the Western Front. Thick forests, steep hills, and dense fog neutralized Allied air superiority. Hitler believed he could repeat the Blitzkrieg of 1940, when German panzers had rolled through the same region to the English Channel. General Heinrich von Luttwitz's XC, a Tiet, Yelly Frau Piet, Panzer Corps was tasked with capturing a small Belgian town few Americans had heard of, Bastogne. 7 roads converged there. 7 lifelines radiating outward like spokes on a wheel. Whoever held Bastogne controlled the entire southern flank of the German offensive. When the attack erupted, the 101st Airborne Division, veterans of Normandy and Market Garden, was resting near Reims, France. On December 17th, Eisenhower gave them a single urgent order: move to Bastogne immediately. The paratroopers loaded into open trucks for a freezing 100-mile overnight journey through sleet and snow. Without proper winter gear, many still wearing their summer jump uniforms. Alongside them came elements of Combat Command B of the 10th Armored Division, racing to delay the German advance until the Airborne could dig in. The first paratroopers arrived at midnight on December 19th, just hours before the Germans would have captured the town unopposed. Brigadier General Anthony McAuliffe, the division's artillery commander, was in charge. Calm, analytical, and modest, McAuliffe was the opposite of a showman, but precisely the kind of man needed for a crisis. He organized the defense with mathematical precision. The 501st Parachute Infantry covered the northwest. The 506th anchored the northeast near Noville. The 502nd held the east. The 327th Glider Infantry stretched along the south and west. Engineers, clerks, and cooks filled the gaps. By the 20th, Bastogne was completely surrounded. 5 German divisions pressed in, outnumbering the Americans 5-1. Fog grounded Allied planes. Ammunition ran low. Temperatures plunged below freezing. Yet no one considered surrender. The paratroopers of the 101st operated by a creed unlike any other. I never surrender, though I be the last. My goal is to succeed in the mission, or die, if needs be in the try. To them, being surrounded wasn't a disaster. It was the job description. They had jumped into Normandy in darkness, fought isolated for days, and bled through the hedgerows of France. Bastogne was just another fight. By December 22nd, the German assaults had become relentless. Artillery flattened houses. Tanks rumbled through the snow. Still, the Americans held, destroying dozens of panzers with M18 Hellcats and coordinated artillery fire. Frustrated, von Luttwitz decided to end the stalemate through diplomacy. That morning, 4 German envoys approached the American lines under white flags, carrying an ultimatum. The Americans were surrounded and outgunned. If they surrendered honorably within 2 hours, their lives would be spared. Otherwise, Bastogne would be annihilated by artillery and anti-aircraft fire. The message was carried to McAuliffe's headquarters in Bastogne. Awakened from a brief sleep, he read it carefully, then chuckled. "Nuts," he said. When his staff asked what reply to send, Operations Officer Lieutenant Colonel Harry Kinnard suggested using that exact word. McAuliffe grinned, signed it on official stationery, and sent it back. The typed note read simply, "To the German commander. Nuts. The American commander." Colonel Joseph Harper delivered it to the German envoys, who looked puzzled. Harper explained, "It means go to hell." The officers stiffened, saluted, and marched away. That single word, nuts, would become immortal, capturing everything about the American paratrooper spirit. Von Lüttwitz had acted according to centuries of European military tradition, where commanders, facing hopeless odds, surrendered to preserve their men. McAuliffe's answer reflected an entirely different culture. A volunteer army of citizen warriors for whom surrender was unthinkable. Paratroopers weren't professionals in the Prussian sense. They were self-selected men who had jumped from airplanes into enemy territory, knowing they'd likely be surrounded. For them, being encircled wasn't a reason to yield. It was proof they were exactly where they were supposed to be. The next morning, December 23rd, the skies cleared, and the battlefield transformed. Hundreds of C-47s roared overhead, dropping ammunition, food, and medical supplies by parachute. P-47 Thunderbolts strafed German armor and artillery. Within hours, morale soared. McAuliffe issued a Christmas message to his troops, praising their courage. "What's merry about all this? Just this. We've stopped cold everything thrown at us from north, east, south, and west. We're giving our country and loved ones a worthy Christmas present, and making for ourselves a Merry Christmas." Meanwhile, Patton's Third Army was racing north through snow and ice. He had pivoted 3 entire divisions in a bold maneuver to relieve Bastogne. On December 26th, tanks of the 4th Armored Division, led by Lieutenant Colonel Creighton Abrams and his Sherman Cobra King, smashed through the final German lines at Ardennes and rolled into Bastogne by late afternoon. The siege was over. Newspapers hailed Patton as the savior of the beleaguered paratroopers, but the men of the 101st disagreed. When reporters later called it a rescue, McAuliffe corrected them sharply. His division had never asked for relief, only surgeons for the wounded. They had held Bastogne because that was their mission, not because they were trapped. In the days that followed, the paratroopers turned from defense to offense, retaking nearby villages and pushing the Germans back toward the Rhine. Between December 19th and January 6th, the 101st suffered over 2,500 casualties, but the German elite divisions suffered far more. Hitler's last offensive had failed. The Battle of the Bulge would end as the bloodiest single battle ever fought by U.S. forces in World War II. Yet, the real significance of Bastogne went far deeper than the numbers. It revealed an irreconcilable difference between two military cultures. The German officer corps, steeped in centuries of aristocratic tradition, believed that surrender under hopeless conditions was the rational duty of a commander protecting his men. The American Airborne believed that surrender was simply not in the vocabulary. Paratroopers were volunteers who accepted death as the cost of accomplishing the mission. Where Germans saw reason, Americans saw defiance. Where Germans expected negotiation, Americans offered only one word: nuts. That cultural divide outlived the battle itself. Decades later, every new paratrooper at Fort Benning learned the story of McAuliffe's reply, a lesson in identity as much as history. The 101st Airborne became the most deployed division in the U.S. Army, not because of superior weapons or tactics, but because of an enduring creed born in the snow of Bastogne. The mission comes first. Surrender is never an option. After the war, McAuliffe rose to full general and retired in 1956. His staff officers, Harry Kinnard and Creighton Abrams, would go on to command in Vietnam and beyond, carrying the lessons of Bastogne with them. General von Lüttwitz survived the war as a prisoner, later admitting he never understood how the Americans could keep fighting in such impossible conditions. The answer, of course, was simple. They were paratroopers. For them, being surrounded wasn't defeat. It was destiny. And from that frozen December morning in 1944, one word would echo through history as the perfect symbol of American defiance, courage, and unbreakable will.